I remember that sweltering morning vividly, trapped inside my suffocating 10-square-meter rented room. I stood before a cracked mirror, trying to fix the frayed edge of my old tie. This interview, I told myself, if I fail again, I probably won't survive in this city. Inside my wallet, there was only a single $1 bill. Torn at the corner, worn out, its faded green matched my own state, exhausted, battered, yet still clinging to a shred of hope. I hadn't eaten since the previous afternoon. My stomach growled, my head spun. I decided to stop by a cafe near the company and buy the cheapest coffee to pull myself together. One small black coffee. $1. I handed over my last bill. The cashier frowned, flipped it back and forth, then pushed it back to me. "Sorry, it's torn. We can't accept it." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I stammered, "It's just a small tear. The value is still the same." "Rules are rules. Please understand." The people behind me started staring, some with pity, some with disdain. My hands trembled as I shoved the bill back into my wallet, muttered a faint "thank you," and walked out with my head down. At that very moment, a middle-aged man in a neat suit walked out of the cafe. I recognized him instantly, Mr. Tran, the HR director, the very man who would interview me. His eyes swept over me, pausing briefly at my shaking hand clutching the torn bill. Without a word, he turned away. The interview took place in a polished, gleaming office. I answered every question, tried my best to present my experience and skills, yet I could feel it clearly. His eyes carried no trust. They were cold, sharp, as if he had already stamped on my forehead the label "incapable of taking care of himself." 15 minutes later, the result was announced. "I'm sorry, we don't think you're the right fit." That was it. No further explanation. I walked out. The midday sun scorched like fire. Inside my wallet, the torn $1 bill lay silent. I burst out laughing, and then suddenly tears fell. I was unemployed, just because of a single dollar. But the story didn't end there. That afternoon, I wandered through crowded streets. An old man sat at a corner beside a wooden box with shaky handwriting, exchanged old bills for new ones. Hesitantly, I pulled out my torn dollar and handed it to him. He examined it, smiled kindly, and gave me back a fresh, crisp bill. He asked, "Why are you holding on to this torn bill so tightly?" I answered, my voice choking, "Because it cost me a job opportunity." The old man looked at me intently, then said slowly, "You didn't lose that chance because of the torn bill. You lost it because people only looked at the outside, never at the value within. A torn bill still has worth. You just need to exchange it at the right place. Talented people are the same. In the wrong environment, no one will ever recognize them." His words pierced the darkness inside me like a ray of light. I suddenly realized that failure wasn't the end. It was a reminder that I needed to find the right path, the right place where my worth would be seen. From that day forward, I changed. I taught myself, practiced, and began with the smallest steps, freelancing, taking on odd projects. No more interviews, no more judgment through a torn bill. I proved my value with my own abilities. Years later, standing at the podium of a grand auditorium, I told this story to hundreds of students eager to enter the real world. I said, "I was once unemployed because of a single dollar, but in truth, that very dollar bought me a lifelong lesson. Never let others define your worth, and never let a small failure turn you into someone who quits." The hall fell silent for a few moments, then erupted in applause. As for me, deep inside, I still remember that day vividly. The day I thought I had lost everything, but in truth, I had begun again from one single dollar. In this podcast, we follow the journey of a struggling young man who loses a job opportunity over a torn $1 bill, only to later realize that true worth isn't defined by outward appearances. resources, but by persistence and the right environment. What begins as a story of humiliation and rejection transforms into a powerful lesson of resilience, self-reinvention, and the discovery of inner value. But how can a single torn dollar teach us more about success than any polished interview ever could?
Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today we're ploughing into a story that begins with something incredibly simple, something most of us wouldn't even give a second thought to. A single, slightly damaged dollar bill.
Right.
But imagine, just for a moment, that this one crumpled piece of paper could cost you a job opportunity, not because you lacked the skills, not because you weren't qualified, but just because of its torn corner.
It sounds almost absurd, doesn't it?
It really does. Yet the narrative we're exploring today shows us just how profoundly these, well, seemingly insignificant details can shape our lives and our perceptions.
It absolutely does, and that's precisely what makes this particular story so compelling, so, ripe for a deep dive. Because you quickly discover it's never really about the dollar itself.
No.
It's a powerful symbol, isn't it? A focal point representing so much more. The snap judgments we face, the value others place on us, or maybe the lack thereof. And crucially, the value we ultimately place on ourselves in the face of all that.
Exactly. It's like a mirror.
Yeah, reflecting societal biases, sure, but also our own resilience, our own inner depths.
That's it.
Yeah.
And what makes this narrative so compelling is its sheer relatability.
Right.
It hits on these universal themes that resonate with all of us, I think. We're diving deep today into the worth of a torn dollar. It's a powerful, really raw first-person account of struggle and eventually profound revelation. Our protagonist, a desperate job seeker, finds himself at what feels like absolute rock bottom.
Yeah, down to his last dollar.
Down to his very last dollar, facing rejection after rejection, and it all culminates in this truly pivotal, life-altering encounter.
And our mission for this deep dive is, well, to meticulously unpack every layer of this journey. It's intensely emotional, but also intellectually rich.
Definitely.
We're here to extract those universal truths about self-worth, perseverance, the often harsh reality of societal judgment, and maybe most importantly, the transformative power of actively shifting your perspective.
That shift is key.
It really is. This story is just packed with those aha moments, insights about resilience, about how vital it is to find environments where your true capabilities aren't just tolerated, but genuinely recognized.
Celebrated, even.
Exactly. Allowed to flourish. We're going to uncover its rich emotional and philosophical depths, making sure the lessons learned here aren't just, heard, but truly felt. They're applicable to anyone who's ever faced a setback, felt undervalued, or just wondered if they truly belong.
So settle in, maybe lean back a bit, and let's embark on this journey together. We invite you to step into our protagonist's shoes, just for a while.
Feel the weight of it all.
Yeah, feel that suffocating weight of his circumstances. Maybe remember those times when you too might have felt undervalued or dismissed or judged unfairly by something external.
We all have those moments.
We do. We promise a detailed, engaging exploration. We'll bring every nuance of the story to light because, honestly, its deceptive simplicity hides a really profound and enduring message. Our journey starts in a place of, well, palpable desperation. You can almost feel it. Picture this. The source describes it vividly. A sweltering morning in a suffocating 10-square-meter rented room.
10 square meters.
Do you feel that? The air is thick, heavy, humid. The space is incredibly cramped, the walls just closing in. It creates this immediate, visceral sense of oppression.
Yeah, it's physical.
It really is, and it permeates everything. He's standing there before a cracked mirror, trying almost futilely to fix the frayed edge of his old tie.
Wow. The imagery.
It's an image of a man desperately trying to hold onto this facade of composure when everything else around him is just crumbling.
And those details, the cracked mirror, the frayed tie, they're so incredibly powerful, aren't they? It's not just about physical wear and tear, though that's certainly there.
Yep.
It's a direct, profound reflection of his internal state. His self-image is literally fragmented, broken, like that mirror.
Yeah.
His resilience is worn thin, frayed at the edges, just like the tie. And his internal monologue at that moment, if I fail again, I probably won't survive in this city. That says so much.
It's heavy.
It hints at an existential desperation, doesn't it? It's not just about losing a job. It's this deep fear that failure this time means a complete unraveling, a loss of identity, a loss of place, maybe the final collapse of his very being. He's teetering on a precipice.
That's a powerful way to put it. the cracked mirror, the frayed tie. And what really drives home his dire circumstances is finding, in his wallet, this stark symbol of his dwindling resources. Only a single $1 bill.
The last one.
The very last one. This isn't just money at this point. It's his last token of potential, the final sliver of something tangible he can use to try and change his fate. It's almost the physical manifestation of his last chance.
And what's truly poignant, woven right into the story, is how the source immediately connects the physical state of that dollar bill to his emotional state.
Yeah, it says it matched his own state.
Exactly. Described as torn at the corner, worn out, its faded green matched my own state. Exhausted, battered, yet still clinging to a shred of hope. That comparison isn't accidental. The dollar becomes this potent visual metaphor for his own worn-out resilience, his almost spent optimism. It's a physical object embodying his deepest anxieties. And let's not forget the sheer physical discomfort he's enduring.
Right, the hunger.
I hadn't eaten since the previous afternoon. My stomach growled, my head spun. This isn't just a minor inconvenience, it's a fundamental biological need going unmet.
Intensifies everything.
Absolutely. It intensifies the stakes of every single small decision he makes that day. That hunger sharpens his desperation, making every interaction, every potential outcome feel like a matter of survival. It's almost a primal scream for sustenance against this backdrop of mental anguish.
So with his body screaming for food and his mind desperately needing some kind of boost, he comes up with this, well, desperate little plan. He decides to stop at a cafe near the company he's interviewing at, The Goal. Buy the cheapest coffee to pull myself together before this crucial interview.
It's such a simple act.
It is, isn't it? So simple, so vulnerable. Just a last-ditch effort for a small, fleeting moment of composure, a tiny spark of energy before facing what he hopes will be his breakthrough.
And this simple plan, born out of such dire need, really underscores a universal human experience, I think.
How so?
Well, when we're facing immense pressure, a high-stakes interview, a personal crisis, any make-or-break moment, we often instinctively seek these small comforts, these moments of clarity.
Yeah, little rituals.
Exactly. It's an attempt to maintain some semblance of control, to steady ourselves, gather our scattered thoughts, project an image of capability, you know.
Right.
It shows his intrinsic need to present his best self, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. He's trying to, quite literally, caffeinate his last shred of hope, prepare for battle with this meager weapon of caffeine.
So, from the suffocating privacy of his room, the silent despair, our protagonist steps out. He heads into the bustling city, completely unaware that this small act of self-preservation is about to lead him straight into a very public, very painful humiliation at that cafe.
The private struggle meets the harsh outside world.
Precisely. So he enters the cafe. This place he hopes will offer just a brief respite, a moment to gather himself before the big interview. He makes his simple request. One small black coffee.
Small and black emphasizes the economy.
Exactly. No frills, just the essentials. He hands over his last precious dollar bill.
And what's immediately striking, what really captures the essence of this moment, is the immediate stark barrier he hits. The cashier's reaction isn't even verbal at first.
Right, the look.
Yeah, it's all nonverbal. Micro-expressions, gestures that speak volumes. She frowned, flipped it back and forth, then pushed it back to me.
Pushed it back. Ouch.
Those actions alone convey this immediate, sharp judgment. It's a physical rejection, an unspoken assessment of worth before any words are even spoken. Then come the words, abrupt, definitive. Sorry, it's torn. We can't accept it.
Just like
that. A punch to the gut. A dismissal based solely on a perceived flaw, a superficial imperfection that, to them, just negates the inherent value.
His response is, well, it's described as a stammered, desperate appeal to logic. He says something like, it's just a small tear as the value is still the same.
He's trying to reason with the system.
Exactly. He's trying to articulate the fundamental worth he believes is still there, despite the surface damage. Appealing to a broader understanding of value, one that looks beyond the obvious tear.
And this is where we really see that conflict between perceived value and institutional rules play out so starkly. The cashier's reply, totally devoid of empathy, rules are rules, please understand, is just an immovable barrier. It's impersonal, mechanistic.
Cold.
Completely cold. It disregards the human element, his desperate plight. It highlights how rigid adherence to protocol, this narrow interpretation of rules, can sometimes just override basic compassion or any broader understanding of inherent worth. The dollar's actual monetary value, its purchasing power, it's still intact, right? But the rule, the outside, the perceived imperfection that takes precedence over its fundamental function, It's a powerful lesson in how arbitrary guidelines can inflict real human pain, often unintentionally.
And as if that wasn't enough, that unyielding rejection, he's then subjected to this immense, crushing weight of public opinion.
Oh, the worst part.
The people behind me started staring, some with pity, some with disdain. Being vulnerable in public is one thing, but being openly judged, made a spectacle of. Especially when you're already at your absolute lowest. It's soul-crushing.
It's truly a double-edged sword, isn't it, that public attention? Pity, while it might seem kinder on the surface, can be just as patronizing, just as debilitating as outright disdain.
Yeah, neither helps.
Neither offers genuine understanding or support. Both just reduce him to his circumstances rather than seeing him as an individual. And his internal reaction is immediate, visceral. It's a physical manifestation of shame.
His hands tremble.
My hands trembled as I shoved the bill back into my wallet, muttered a faint, "Thank you," and walked out with my head down. It's not just emotional, it's a physical surrender to the humiliation.
A retreat.
A quiet, almost subconscious retreat into himself. He literally shrinks under the weight of those gazes, pulling back from the world that just rejected him so publicly. It's a powerful depiction of how public scrutiny, even unspoken, can profoundly impact our sense of self-worth.
And it's right then, in the immediate aftermath of this public, painful rejection, while he's still reeling, fate intervenes again, but in this subtle, devastating way.
Oh, the timing.
As he makes his shaky exit, he's about to walk directly into the path of a powerful figure whose unspoken judgment will, well, pretty much seal his immediate future. So he's making his shaky exit, reeling from the cafe rejection, the stares, and the timing couldn't be more dramatically cruel. At that very moment, a middle-aged man in a neat suit walked out of the cafe.
Almost cinematic, isn't it?
It really is. This seemingly indifferent figure enters the scene just as our protagonist hits his emotional lowest point, his self-worth completely vulnerable.
And the immediate recognition is absolutely critical here. He knows who this is.
Instantly.
Yeah.
I recognize him instantly. Mr. Tran, the HR director, the very man who would interview me.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so this is no longer just some random stranger whose judgment he could maybe dismiss. This is the gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper to his future.
The man holding the key to the job he desperately needs. The stakes, already sky high, are instantly, immeasurably amplified by this chance, ill-timed encounter.
That casual observation in this context of profound desperation becomes this critical moment of unspoken, powerful assessment.
Mr. Tran's observation is described as, well, piercing. A gaze that cuts right through the protagonist's attempts at composure. His eyes swept over me, pausing briefly at my shaking hand, clutching the torn bill.
He noticed the hand, the bill.
It wasn't a casual glance. The source emphasizes the duration, the focus. It lingered. Mr. Tran saw the frayed tie, the downcast posture, the tremor in his hand, and crucially, that telltale torn dollar.
Every detail a data point.
Exactly, in a rapid, silent evaluation.
And here's where it gets really interesting, where the silent communication just speaks volumes. What Mr. Tran doesn't say
But silence
is as impactful, if not more so, than what the cashier explicitly said. Without a word, he turned away. The profound impact of this silence just cannot be overstated.
No words needed.
None. The judgment was communicated through that lingering observation, that quick assessment, and then the ultimate dismissal through complete disinterest, as if he'd already been assessed and found wanting, deemed unworthy.
Wow.
This starkly illustrates what psychologists call the primacy effect, that tendency for initial information to heavily influence our overall perception.
The first impression.
Exactly. Mr. Tran's fleeting glance, the torn dollar, the protagonist's visible shame. These weren't just observations, they were the first data points, rapidly forming a likely negative impression that then filters everything else.
And in high-stakes situations.
Especially in high-stakes professional contexts, where time is short, competition is fierce, these snap judgments often carry disproportionate weight. They become almost impossible to reverse later. It's a powerful display of power dynamics, where a superficial flaw can basically predetermine your fate.
This brief, silent encounter immediately plants these deep seeds of doubt in our protagonist's mind. He feels it deep inside with this almost gut-wrenching certainty.
He knows
that the torn dollar, the public shame, have already cast this inescapable shadow over his chances. He feels prejudged before he even gets to the interview room. The game feels lost before it's even begun.
And this is a feeling, unfortunately, many of us can relate to, isn't it?
Sadly, yes.
Have you ever felt that an outside factor, Something seemingly unrelated to your abilities, maybe how you were dressed one day, or a fleeting awkward moment, something totally out of your control, unfairly colored someone's perception of you.
Oh, definitely.
This scene perfectly captures that acute anxiety, that crushing sense of being prejudged, of having your worth diminished before you even get a fair chance to speak for yourself. That incident in the cafe, now witnessed by the HR director, becomes this inescapable precursor to the formal interview.
A heavy psychological burden.
Almost a self-fulfilling prophecy just waiting to unfold.
The interview itself, that moment he desperately hoped for, becomes this exercise in profound, almost agonizing contrast. The interview took place in a polished, gleaming office.
Polished and gleaming.
Yeah, this pristine professional environment standing in stark opposition to his own disheveled state, his internal turmoil. It just amplifies the psychological pressure he's already under. And yet, despite all of this, despite the crushing weight of the morning, he still makes this monumental effort. I answered every question, tried my best to present my experience and skills.
Performing under duress, that's incredible resilience.
It really is.
To perform under that kind of perceived scrutiny, knowing or at least deeply feeling that you've likely already been judged and maybe dismissed by the very person across the table, that takes immense mental fortitude.
Absolutely.
It speaks to that universal human desire to prove our worth, demonstrate capability, even when it feels like the odds are stacked against us and our value is already fundamentally questioned. He's not just answering questions, he's desperately trying to overcome a preconceived notion, a silent condemnation, with pure effort and skill.
An uphill battle.
A true uphill battle against an invisible yet deeply felt adversary.
But that unspoken judgment from Mr. Tran, it clearly manifests, not just in the director's demeanor, but in our protagonist's visceral, internalized experience. He states it explicitly. Yet I could feel it clearly. His eyes carried no trust.
He felt it, not just observed it.
Exactly. This wasn't just him interpreting Mr. Tran's behavior. It was a deeply internalized feeling, confirming his earlier premonition. The damage was done. The decision made before he'd even really started.
And the source uses such vivid, devastating imagery to describe this feeling, revealing the profound impact of that silent judgment. They were cold, sharp, as if he had already stamped on my forehead the label incapable of taking care of himself.
Oof. That label.
Let's really dissect that. This isn't just about the job anymore, is it? It's a sweeping, debilitating judgment about his entire character and capability.
Yeah, fundamental.
It suggests a fundamental lack of personal responsibility, stemming entirely from a single superficial impression. The torn dollar, the cafe rejection, Mr. Tran's dismissive glance, they all coalesced into this profound, internalized feeling of being fundamentally prejudged, not just as an applicant, but as a person.
As a man, even.
As a man, the smallest perceived flaw, that torn corner, became this giant disqualifying marker, unfairly defining his entire worth in the eyes of his potential employer. It's a classic example of what's often called the halo effect in reverse, where one negative trait casts this dark shadow over all other positive qualities.
And the rejection itself, when it finally comes, is just swift, brutal, and utterly devoid of any real explanation. 15 minutes later, the result was announced. I'm sorry, we don't think you're the right fit.
15 minutes, that's it.
The speed, the brevity, it just underscores its finality, its almost predetermined nature, strips him of any lingering hope he might have clung to.
And what's particularly stinging here, what adds that extra layer of pain and frustration, is the complete lack of explanation. That was it. No further explanation.
Just not the right fit.
Right. This leaves him to grapple endlessly with the perceived reason for failure. It often leads to deep self-blame, reinforcing the idea that, yes, the torn dollar was the singular, devastating cause.
Which feels worse, doesn't it?
It's almost worse than getting a clear, albeit difficult, reason, because the ambiguity leaves you to endlessly replay the scenario, fill in the blanks with your deepest insecurities and fears. Self-blame often becomes the only conclusion you can reach.
Yeah.
It really raises an important question for you, the listener. What feels worse? A clear, specific reason for rejection, or a vague, generalized one that leaves you endlessly replaying, often with self-blame as the only devastating conclusion. The latter can be far more damaging to self-worth, I think.
The outcome of that interview solidifies his despair, confirms his worst fears, judged, dismissed, rejected. But crucially, as we've hinted, this isn't where the story ends.
No, this rock-bottom moment is actually fertile ground.
Exactly, fertile ground for a new beginning.
Yeah.
As our protagonist leaves the office, the external environment seems to just cruelly mirror his internal state, amplifying his despair. I walked out. The midday sun scorched like fire.
Scorched like fire. Wow.
That scorching sun, it isn't just weather, is it? It's a powerful metaphor for his own burning despair, his anger, the raw, blistering wound of rejection, the feeling of having his hopes just incinerated.
Yeah, and inside his wallet.
His silent companion. Inside my wallet, the torn $1 bill lay silent.
The dollar bill, once that symbol of last desperate hope, has now tragically transformed into this quiet, almost accusatory witness to his failure.
A monument to his failure.
Yeah, exactly. It's no longer just money. It's this tangible physical representation of everything that went wrong. A tiny yet colossal monument to his perceived inadequacy. And his emotional fallout is so complex, almost paradoxical in its intensity.
The laughing and crying.
I burst out laughing and then suddenly tears fell.
This isn't simple sadness. It's a profound, almost hysterical release. A raw mix of incredulity at the absurdity of it all, bitter resentment, profound sadness, maybe even a touch of manic despair.
The injustice of it. Yeah, the perceived injustice, the sheer unreasonableness of the rejection comes to a head. He believes in that moment, with unwavering certainty, I was unemployed. Just because of a single dollar.
He fixates on it.
He's oversimplifying the cause, fixating on that one tangible element because it's the easiest, most concrete way to grapple with what feels like an utterly unfair, arbitrary blow to his entire future.
It's a natural human tendency, isn't it? To seek a concrete, singular reason, even if it's an oversimplification of much more complex circumstances.
But right after this rock-bottom moment, this cathartic explosion of emotion, the narrator steps in with a crucial line, signaling that shift. But the story didn't end there.
The lifeline.
It's a promise, isn't it, that there's more beyond this immediate pain.
That phrase is incredibly important for you, the listener. It builds anticipation, offers immediate reassurance that hope is on the horizon. It tells us, and crucially it tells the protagonist, that this perceived endpoint, this moment of ultimate failure, is actually a turning point.
A foundation for growth. Exactly. It challenges his own initial simplistic conclusion that it was just because of a single dollar. This moment of reflection, even if initially misguided, is the very first step towards a deeper, more profound understanding.
It also prompts us to consider how often we attribute major setbacks to these seemingly minor details.
Right, when the underlying issues might be more complex, systemic, maybe even just a fundamental mismatch of environments. How often do we fixate on a small flaw, a misspoken word, a clumsy gesture, when grappling with what feels like an unfair blow, rather than looking at the broader context?
It's a coping mechanism.
It is, but one that can often blind us to the true lessons.
So leaving that scorching sun behind, the weight of the failed interview still pressing down, our protagonist continues to wander. But as the afternoon wears on, a chance encounter in the bustling city is about to offer him not just a fresh perspective,
but a profound redefinition.
Exactly. A redefinition of his entire ordeal. Later that afternoon, still reeling, still carrying that weight, the protagonist wandered through crowded streets. The sheer bustling indifference of the city around him
just emphasizes the isolation.
It really does. Makes him feel even more alone in his despair. Then, amidst this urban chaos, he spots this unique, almost anachronistic figure. An old man sat at a corner beside a wooden box with shaky handwriting, exchange old bills for new ones.
Wow. An old money changer.
Yeah.
This old man immediately emerges as this deeply symbolic figure, doesn't he? An unexpected source of solace, of profound practical wisdom in a world that, up to this point, has been utterly unforgiving.
Different kind of economy.
Exactly. One that values restoration, recognition, inherent worth over superficial rejection. And the protagonist's approach to him is so telling. Hesitantly, I pulled out my torn dollar and handed it to him.
He still has it.
Even after everything, the shame, the job loss, he still has this deep emotional connection to the dollar. Despite its role in his rejection, it's almost like a final test.
A last effort to redeem it.
Yeah, to see if its inherent value truly exists somewhere, for someone.
And the exchange itself is deceptively simple, yet it's charged with this deeply profound meaning for him. He examined it, smiled kindly, and gave me back a fresh, crisp bill.
A kind smile, the contrast.
Huge contrast. The old man's gentle, accepting demeanor compared to the cashier's frown and Mr. Tran's cold gaze. This isn't just a financial transaction, it's a physical manifestation of restored worth.
An act of validation?
A quiet moment of grace that just challenges everything he's experienced that day.
What's truly fascinating here, and so critically important, is the immediate psychological relief and validation this provides. For the very first time that day, someone has looked at that torn bill and seen its inherent value, its fundamental worth, rather than fixating on the superficial flaw.
Someone saw past the tear.
Exactly. This seemingly small act becomes a powerful affirmation, a moment of unexpected, profound grace in a day filled entirely with harshness and rejection. It's a revalidation that immediately starts to chip away at the crushing self-doubt, the narrative of worthlessness that had begun to take root. It's a tangible demonstration that some flaws are external and don't negate intrinsic value.
The old man then gently initiates a dialogue, almost inviting him to share his pain, unburden himself. There's a real kindness and curiosity in his question. Why are you holding on to this torn bill so tightly?
It's an invitation to be heard.
Such a stark difference from the dismissals. This is an invitation to explain.
And it elicits this raw, unvarnished confession from the protagonist, laying bare the deepest wound. Because it cost me a job opportunity.
Still believes it.
That simple sentence reveals the profound pain and the deep-seated belief he still holds that the dollar, its torn state, was the singular direct cause of his failure. He's still fixated on it, showing how deeply that external judgment and his interpretation of it had penetrated his sense of self. It's a moment of unfiltered, unanalyzed pain.
This is the moment everything shifts. The narrative pivots. The old man looked at me intently, then said slowly, "You feel the weight in that pause."
Yeah, building the gravitas. Preparing him and us for a fundamental truth.
And then comes the pivotal insight, the core lesson that just meticulously breaks down his experience and redefines it completely, challenging that deeply held belief. You didn't lose that chance because of the torn bill.
Not because of the bill.
You lost it because people only looked at the outside, never at the value within.
Boom. Monumental shift in perspective. He moves from blaming the object, the torn dollar, to critiquing superficial judgment, places the responsibility on the environment, the people within it, rather than on the inherent flaw of the individual or the bill.
A reattribution of blame.
Away from the self. Hugely important.
And the old man brings it home with this brilliant, tangible analogy that perfectly distills this abstract concept. A torn bill still has worth. You just need to exchange it at the right place.
Right place.
Talented people are the same. In the wrong environment, no one will ever recognize them.
That analogy is so powerful. It makes the complex idea of self-worth and environmental fit incredibly relatable, connecting it directly to the very object that caused him so much pain.
Yeah.
What's truly illuminating here are the profound implications of the right place and the wrong environment. How often do we as individuals blame ourselves for failures, for feeling undervalued, when the real issue might be a fundamental mismatch?
Between us and the context.
Exactly. A mismatch between our talents, our personality, our inherent worth, and the specific context we're in. The bill wasn't worthless. It just needed the correct system or the right person, someone with wisdom and perspective to recognize its inherent value. The old man's words provide not just comfort, but a complete reframing.
Shifting the blame.
Shifting it from the individual, from the torn dollar, to the often flawed perception of the beholder and the limitations of the environment, that's a crucial distinction that can liberate us from so much self-blame.
That profound wisdom from the old man, it really serves as the turning point. It transforms his whole understanding. Let's really dig into the layers of that insight, because it's packed with universal truths that resonate far beyond just one torn dollar.
Absolutely. The first part, people only looked at the outside, never at the value within. That's a truth we encounter constantly, maybe without even realizing it.
All the time.
How often do superficial flaws, a torn bill, maybe a slightly disheveled appearance, an initial awkward impression, anxiety during a presentation, how often do these overshadow genuine capability, profound potential, deep character?
Yeah, it happens in hiring, social interactions.
Even how we judge products by their packaging. Or just the unconscious biases we all hold. This concept really challenges us to look beyond the immediate surface. But how do we actually do that in a world geared towards snap judgment?
That's a question.
Is it about actively seeking hidden details? Or maybe understanding our own cognitive biases, like that halo effect in reverse we mentioned that lead us to dismiss things too quickly. Recognizing these mental shortcuts in ourselves and others is the first step, isn't it?
Conscious effort.
It requires conscious effort to override those ingrained tendencies.
And then there's that incredible resilience, the objective truth implied in a torn bill still has worth.
Yeah.
You just need to exchange it at the right place.
Yeah.
It emphasizes enduring intrinsic value, despite perceived damage or external judgment.
Right. The bill wasn't inherently worthless. Its worth was simply unrecognized or unaccepted in that specific context. It just needed the correct system, the right person, a different environment to recognize and revalidate its inherent value.
Revalidate, not redeem.
That's a key distinction, absolutely. Okay. It's not about redemption as if the bill or we as individuals needed to somehow earn back lost value or atone for a perceived flaw. The value was always intrinsic, inherent, unchanging. Instead, it's about revalidation. Finding a system, a person, an environment that possesses the wisdom, the insight, the perspective to recognize that inherent worth, irrespective of superficial damage. The bill wasn't fundamentally broken. The system, or the specific people who rejected it, were simply unable or unwilling to see beyond the surface.
Applies directly to people.
So directly, what constitutes the right place for us? It could be a different company, one with a culture that champions innovation, celebrates unconventional thinkers, even if their ideas seem a bit torn at first.
Or a different field entirely.
Or an entirely different industry where your unique, maybe previously undervalued strengths suddenly become indispensable. We're talking about finding an ecosystem where your inherent worth isn't just tolerated, but actively sought out, understood, and amplified.
And finally, the old man brings it home with such powerful clarity. Talented people are the same. In the wrong environment, no one will ever recognize them. It's not about lacking talent.
No, it's about being in an environment that either doesn't possess the lens to value what you offer, can't perceive your specific strengths due to its own blind spots, or actively suppresses them because of rigid structures or cultural biases. It suggests talent isn't this fixed, universally recognized thing.
It needs the right soil.
It requires the right soil to grow. This is where we connect it directly to your professional and personal life, the practical application for you, the listener. Consider how organizational culture, leadership styles, or even just the available opportunities within a context can define whether talent flourishes or withers. Think of a brilliant artist forced into a purely corporate analytical role where their ideas are dismissed as impractical.
Or an innovator in a rigid company.
Exactly. An innovative thinker stifled in a tradition-bound organization that values conformity over originality. Their talent isn't absent, it's just misplaced, unrecognized, and therefore tragically undervalued. This insight provides a powerful framework for evaluating our own situations. Are we truly in an environment where our inherent worth, our unique contributions can be seen, appreciated, and make an impact?
It's about assessing alignment.
Self-assessment not of our talent, but of our alignment with the environment.
The impact of these words on the protagonist is immediate, profound, a truly transformative moment. He describes it perfectly. His words pierce the darkness inside me like a ray of light.
A ray of light, instantaneous.
Not a slow dawning. It's an epiphany, a sudden, powerful, almost spiritual shift from crushing self-blame to enlightened understanding. Pure clarity amidst the chaos.
And that epiphany leads to this dramatic, actionable shift in perspective. I suddenly realized that failure wasn't the end.
Not the end.
It was a reminder that I needed to find the right path, the right place where my worth would be seen. Failure, in this new light, is no longer a dead end, a final condemnation.
It becomes feedback.
Powerful feedback, a clear redirection. It's a catalyst for seeking alignment, for actively pursuing an environment where his unique talents could thrive, be recognized, contribute meaningfully. This realization is the critical step from despair to proactive self-redefinition and empowered action.
The moment he reclaims his agency.
Absolutely.
With his newfound clarity, armed with the old man's wisdom, the protagonist embarks on this journey of profound self-redefinition, actively building his worth rather than passively waiting for it to be recognized. The impact of the lesson is immediate, fundamental. From that day forward, I changed. It wasn't gradual or hesitant.
No, a conscious choice.
A conscious, decisive choice.
Yeah.
A complete reorientation of his mindset and approach. A reclaiming of his agency, moving forward with purpose.
And what's crucial here, what really defines this transformation, is the initiative and agency he took. I taught myself, practiced, and began with the smallest steps.
He took control.
He didn't wait for external validation or another potentially soul-crushing interview. He took control. This self-reliance, this internal locus of control, is paramount. What kind of skills might one teach themselves here? Maybe new software, coding, writing, design, business acumen for self-employment?
Anything relevant.
Right. And starting with the smallest steps, taking minor projects, building a portfolio brick by brick, seeking micro opportunities that reinforces learning, builds tangible evidence of capability, and gradually rebuilds confidence. He recognized his worth wasn't given by others,
But
demonstrated through his own actions and result.
This shift leads him to a completely new, empowering path for proving his worth, one that actively bypasses those traditional gatekeepers who'd rejected him. He turned to freelancing, taking on odd projects,
Strategic choice.
a deliberate move to step outside the system that had undervalued him.
And in doing so, he makes this powerful, almost defiant declaration. No more interviews, no more judgment through a torn bill.
Liberation.
It's a profound statement of liberation, a conscious, strategic decision to actively avoid environments where superficial assessments and ingrained biases could hinder him. He recognized the traditional path had failed him, not because he lacked ability, but because of its inherent flaws in perceiving talent.
So his new approach addresses that.
Directly. I proved my value with my own abilities. That's the core of his transformation validation based on performance, tangible output, undeniable results, rather than subjective perceptions or fleeting first impressions.
It's a powerful testament to how freelancing or project work forces you to prove value through output. You deliver or you don't.
Your work speaks for itself.
Exactly. Rather than relying on a resume or a quick chat where biases can creep in, this pathway offered him a direct, unambiguous demonstration of his competence.
Precisely. He seized control of his professional narrative, meticulously defining success on his own terms, no longer waiting for validation. He was actively building his reputation, his worth, his career, project by project, client by client.
An inspiring example.
It really is. Taking a devastating setback and turning it into a catalyst for profound growth, which really begs the question for you, the listener. How can you proactively demonstrate your value rather than passively waiting? What small steps can you take today to build that portfolio of undeniable worth, to create your own right place?
And now years leap forward. We see the ultimate triumph of this philosophy, a powerful testament to resilience, self-belief, and the wisdom gleaned from what once felt like rock bottom.
Years pass, a significant amount of time, and we find our protagonist in a vastly different place, a setting that couldn't be further from that suffocating rented room. Years later, standing at the podium of a grand auditorium.
Oh, wow. It paints such a vivid picture of his ultimate success. A powerful, almost breathtaking contrast to that small, cramped room in the cracked mirror where his journey began. He stands now not as a desperate job seeker, but as a seasoned success, on a platform, ready to impart wisdom.
And the significance of this moment is profound. For him, for his audience, he's telling the story to hundreds of students eager to enter the real world.
Passing it on.
He's not just achieved personal success, he's transformed his profound personal pain, his humiliation, into universal public wisdom, demonstrating the long-term impact of overcoming adversity and learning the right lessons from it. He's sharing a crucial blueprint with the next generation. Preparing them for the very challenges he faced, making his personal trauma a guide for their resilience, imparting this deeply empathetic lesson before they even encounter their own torn dollars.
He revisits his origin story, grounding his success in the raw truth of his past. I was once unemployed because of a single dollar.
Owning it.
It's not just a nostalgic anecdote. It's a powerful, honest reminder of how far he's come and the depth of the lesson learned.
Yeah.
It gives his words weight, authenticity.
And from that deeply personal, almost traumatic experience, he distills these two incredibly powerful pillars of lifelong wisdom. These are really the core messages of our entire deep dive today.
What are they?
But in truth, that very dollar bought me a lifelong lesson. Never let others define your worth, and never let a small failure turn you into someone who quits. Let's break those down, because they're the enduring takeaways.
Yep.
Never let others define your worth. This emphasizes the critical importance of an internal locus of control. Your value, your inherent worth, your capability, they aren't contingent on someone else's fleeting approval or superficial judgment.
It's about owning it yourself.
Owning your intrinsic value, cultivating a self-belief that stands independent of external validation. It's a powerful call to self-sovereignty.
And the second pillar?
Equally vital. Never let a small failure turn you into someone who quits. This speaks directly to the power of perseverance, grit, a growth mindset. It fundamentally reframes setbacks.
Not as dead ends.
Not as insurmountable reasons to give up, but as invaluable opportunities for learning, for redirection, and ultimately for profound personal growth. It's the refusal to be defeated by a momentary obstacle, understanding that every no can bring you closer to a more aligned yes.
This is a meticulous analysis of the human spirit's resilience.
It really is. And connect this back to the torn dollar metaphor. The dollar's worth was inherent. The problem was the environment, the system, the external judgment that failed to recognize it.
Our worth is inherent too.
Similarly, our worth is inherent. It's constant. Failures often highlight misalignments, a wrong fit, a biased perception, a restrictive environment, rather than fundamental inadequacy on our part. It's a call to persistent self-belief, understanding that while circumstances can challenge us, they don't diminish our fundamental value. It's about distinguishing between who you are and what happens to you.
The impact on the audience is palpable. The hall fell silent for a few moments, then erupted in applause. That collective affirmation shows how deeply his message resonated.
Hitting home with those about to face similar challenges, maybe seeing their own future torn dollars through a new, more hopeful lens.
And for the protagonist himself, the lesson isn't just a story he tells, it's a core, living part of his identity. He reflects, as for me, deep inside, I still remember that day vividly.
Never forget.
The day I thought I had lost everything, but in truth, I had begun again from one single dollar.
It's not just a distant memory, it's a lived truth that continues to inform his perspective. A constant reminder that rock bottom can truly be the most fertile ground for a new beginning, a profound transformation, and a redefinition of what success truly means. It's a testament to enduring human spirit and the transformative power of a single, well-learned lesson.
What an incredible, profound journey. From the brink of despair in that suffocating room to the podium of success in a grand auditorium, all sparked by a seemingly insignificant torn dollar bill. It truly encapsulates the idea that the greatest, most impactful lessons often emerge from the smallest, most unexpected rejections.
Absolutely. We've meticulously explored his journey, from the despair and the rejection of the torn dollar, through the pain of public scrutiny and an unfair interview, to the life-altering wisdom from the old man, and finally, to the triumph of self-worth and purpose.
And the core messages.
Crystal clear, I think. The crucial difference between inherent value and perceived worth. The powerful, often underestimated role the environment plays in recognizing talent, and the transformative potential in reframing failure not as an end, but as a redirection, a catalyst for growth.
So as you reflect on this deep dive, we want to ask you, the listener, to turn that lens inward. What torn dollars have you encountered in your life? What rejections felt profoundly unfair, maybe based on something superficial, out of your control? And how did they ultimately shape your path?
Yeah, did they lead you to question your environment? Or perhaps to define your own value more fiercely, more independently?
We encourage you to really consider this. Are you currently in an environment, professional, social, personal, where your inherent worth is truly seen, genuinely valued, and allowed to flourish?
Or are you consistently being judged by a torn edge, some superficial flaw that obscures your true capabilities? If you feel you're not in the right place, what right place might you strategically seek out? Or maybe more immediately, what small steps can you begin to take today to proactively demonstrate your value directly?
Bypassing those superficial judgments.
Allowing your true capabilities to shine. The story isn't just about a job seeker, it's a mirror for all of us, reflecting that universal challenge of self-worth and recognition.
And here's a final thought for you to carry forward, something to really chew on. If your worth isn't defined by a torn edge or a closed door, if your inherent value remains constant regardless of external perception,
then what?
Then what untapped, unexplored potential truly lies within you, just waiting for the right environment, or perhaps simply waiting for you to courageously define it, to unleash it, regardless of any external judgment.
Go find your right place.
Or better yet, create it. Until next time, keep digging deeper into what truly matters.
If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell to the latest update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end, and see you in the next video.